Hello, Dr. Kavi and friends. Welcome to webinar session about new literacies. In this webinar, we're going to discuss about new literacies within four main references. The first reference is from a book entitled Handbook of Effective Literacy Instruction, Research-Based Practice K through 8 by Taylor and Duke of Chapter 7 entitled Digital Literacy. The second reference is an article by Lab, Moss, and Broswell entitled Envisioning New Literacies Through a Lens of Teaching and Learning. The third reference is an article by Dr. Gavi et al. Entitled The Promise of Remix, an Open Message to Educators. The fourth reference is an article by Compton Lilly entitled What Can New Literacy Studies Offer to the Teaching of Struggling Readers? There will be additional resources as we discuss through the chapter. In the end of our discussion, there will be several questions for you to respond within the thread of the webinar. Some of your thoughts will enrich and deepen our discussion. So, let's begin our discussion on new literacies. Teaching and learning have been influenced enormously by technologies nowadays. Let's mention internet and information communication technologies like weblogs, wikis, podcasts, discussion boards, and streaming video, and many other technologies have influenced enormously towards teaching and learning nowadays. That's why there's a statement by Koiro, Nobel, Lanskier, and Liu that the internet has brought unprecedented dimensions to both the speed and the scale of change in the technologies for literacy, forcing us to directly confront the issue of new literacies. Now, previous technology for literacy has been adopted by so many, in so many different places, in such a short period, and with such profound consequences. But how can it be? Let's hear what Victor Hu, the global head of education, technology, and services at Goldman Sachs, talk about the ways technology will transform the classroom.
Investment in the education space has grown tremendously over the past few years. Today, the level of investment is over 10 times what we saw in the 2000s. And the investment is coming not just from the public sector, but increasingly from the private sector. One of the most promising areas is in the world of personalized learning. We all have jagged learning profiles. None of us are truly average. Through technology, we actually now have the potential to meet learners where they are. So content, instead of being presented in a monolithic or linear format, can be broken down and modularized and presented to the learner at the point of need, at the right time, at the right level of difficulty. Another area that is really interesting is in the world of data and analytics. We can collect an enormous amount of data not only around a student's actual competency, but around their engagement with texts, around their engagement with different concepts. And teachers can engage with students much earlier than they otherwise would have when someone is struggling with a problem, and provide early intervention that can ultimately help with issues around student retention and dropouts. Another area that is exciting is in competency-based learning. Historically, we've had a factory model of education, where people needed to be in their seats for a certain amount of time, and people had to go through one grade in order to get to the next. But the reality is everyone has different strengths and weaknesses. And through a competency-based model where people can take just as long as they need in order to learn a material, nobody gets left behind, and people can learn at their own pace. So today, in a technology-rich world, education can be a process of lifelong learning. Teachers and students can come together at a scale that we've never been able to experience before. And that really broadens the ability of society to transfer knowledge, to educate its people, and ultimately to make progress.
The video has given us a picture of how technology transformed classroom into a broader point of view, having more access almost to everything. And so, digital literacy later on are discussed on how it relates to the skills and strategies associated with traditional prints, tags, as well as newer digital tags. And we're going to also discuss on how digital literacy support the development of skills and strategies we are already teaching. And we're going to also discuss about digital literacy will require the teachers to teach new skills and strategies. Well, what are the characteristics of digital literacy then? There are several characteristics of digital literacy according to Koiro, Nobel, Lansky, and Liu. They are critical to full participation in 21st century world, and digital literacy is also deictic, meaning that they are rapidly and continuously changing. The third one, it should be multiple literacies. The meaning is that they're multiple, multimodal, and multifaceted, and therefore it requires not literacy as a singular entity, but multiple literacies. And the last one, it should be for effective use with new and different skills, strategies, and dispositions required, and those are termed as new literacies. Then what makes someone to be called as a literate person in the 21st century? According to Anstey and Poole, literate person in 21st century means that they are able to read both traditional texts and new digital texts, and of course to use this text to communicate. And literate person in 21st century means that they have a very large repertoire of literacy skills and strategies. And of course, they need to be flexible enough to respond to the ever-changing landscape of new literacies. We have mentioned several times about new literacies. What are the principles of new literacies? There are several principles of new literacies according to Lab, Moss, and Roswell. The first one, new literacies should be a critical literacy. It means that it requires the teachers to help the students to comprehend the way they can critically analyzing author's message. Students can think beyond the text, and teachers should allow the students to evaluate information through analysis of culture, class, gender, and issues of power, intention, and authenticity. The second one, new literacies should support students' engagement with multimodal text. It means that it should contain modes or socially culturally shaped resources for meaning making. Why it is important? Because students will be able to view content from variety of perspectives, that they can finally think critically about the text. And the last one, new literacy should transform and redesign text information. It means that students are able to produce counter texts of research projects or by taking social action that illustrates an alternate perspectives. It is important to build students' motivation, to build their engagement, and finally, it helps the students to improve their reading achievement. Those are the principles of new literacies. Now, what are new literacy studies? According to Compton Lilly in 2009, new literacy studies refer to how literacy practices are linked to people's lives, identities, and social affiliations. And so, literacy studies help the educators to move beyond skills-based approaches to literacy learning that will enable them to recognize that a vast range of experiences contribute to literacy learning. Then what do we expect from class with digital literacies? What will educators do to do their teaching and learning? Let's watch a video by AJ Picture to know the picture of how digital literacy classroom will be.
Let's face it, school's not what it used to be. Today's high schoolers are learning how to fly drones and 3D printing their artwork. It's really cool, but also kind of scary. So what crazy new technologies will replace number 2 pencils and good old graph paper in the classrooms of the future? Virtual reality has been around since the 90s, but now Facebook and Google are no longer in your face, but on your face. Google's Expeditions program turns smartphones into virtual reality viewers using simple, inexpensive cardboard. And now that Facebook's bought Oculus Rift, they're planning on getting into classroom gaming as early as next year. This is the first kind of headgear that might get you into the popular crowd. 3D printing in schools is revolutionizing the art of show and tell. These printers can make machine parts, jewelry, even guns. Yesterday's arts and crafts is now modern-day engineering. Elementary-aged children are already using 3D printing to design prosthetic hands. Remember how you had to lug around heavy books and then swap them out for other heavy books from your locker? Well, now there's the cloud, saving students from back problems everywhere. But the cloud could also give teachers direct access to data on students' study habits. By doing all their homework online, students provide engagement data on how long they've spent on their assignments and whether or not they're taking notes. There's a bonus though. Major publishers could use that data to judge how effective and engaging certain textbooks are, so you could be recycling that boring algebra book. With biometrics technology, you've got fingerprint scanning to borrow library books and iris scanning instead of ID cards. Teachers will even be able to tell if you're concentrating or not during online courses using eye tracking technologies. Yikes. It's like old school projectors, but in 3D. Remember Michael Jackson's Back from the Dead moonwalk performance? Well, hologram technology in classrooms is still just a dream for now because it's too expensive. But in the future, it would allow teachers to give lessons to students across the world. Imagine taking a tour of a historic 3D model of the Colosseum right from your desk. The potential for new technology in the classroom is pretty amazing. But Will it cause students who are plugged in all the time to forget what it's like to live in the real world?
The video has given us the picture of how New Literacies classroom will be and how New Literacies practices are created by the teachers. As mentioned by Dr. Kavi et al. In her article that New Literacies practices redefine teaching and learning that fosters students' critical thinking and engagement. What are the roles of New Literacies teacher then? There are several roles of New Literacies teacher. There are at least 5 mentioned here. The first one is teachers in New Literacies classroom should be critically literate themselves. They need to recognize their own beliefs and biases and then understand that New Literacies have more to do with ideological and epistemological shifts in understanding literacy than just merely using digital technologies. The second role, teachers should be able to reframe and incorporate New Literacies into their practices, into their instruction. In this role, teachers should also be an interrogator. How? They need to demonstrate to the students how to both navigate and interrogate the impact media and technology have on their lives. And also, teacher needs to interrogate text and technology and teach the students how to interrogate text and technology, which is central to their assessing the truth and value of what they read, regardless of whether it is online or traditional formats. The third role, teacher, becomes the resource manager. It means that teacher needs to model how to manage print and electronic resources for the students. And so it means that they need to ensure that classroom contexts should support literacy learning through a wide variety of text types. The next role, teacher, is a co-constructor of knowledge. It means that they need to take the roles of co-learners by acknowledging that students may have more information than they do about certain topics. And so it means that students will need to actively engage in the learning process. And the last one, teacher is a design consultant. It means that teacher needs to be understanding students' views about literacy and the world. And it supports the students' ability to provide feedback. And then teacher should also give advice on the text that the students are creating while constructing their own knowledge about the content. Now that we've talked about new literacies, the questions will be, why digital tools motivate students and change the nature of written expression? Well, there are 6 words to explain why: freedom, choice, accessibility, identity and voice, and authenticity. Freedom. Why? Well, because students can get freedom. using the digital tools. Students are not restricted to guidelines set by the teacher, not even the district or state. So they're very successful in navigating within and among determined requirements that they set on their own. Choice. Why? Because through digital tools, they will have abundant choices available. Accessibility. Well, mobile is the key term, mobile. So they're having accessibility towards everything. Identity and voice. By expanding the range of what's possible in the arena of written expression, digital tools give the students a very big capacity for identity construction and personal voice. And the last one, authenticity. It's because along the digital tools, they have the capacity to write to real audiences beyond the classroom. And this source of motivation, along with the others above, holds very great instructional potential. It is very interesting how digital tools can affect students' motivation and the nature of written expression. And when we try to discuss deeper why, well, maybe it's also part of the nature of digital text itself. The digital text has at least three natures. First one, nonlinear hypertext, inclusion of multiple media, and also it has a very interactive design. Digital text allows the students to move from one part of the text to another and also relate to entirely different texts. That digital texts are also very interesting by including variety of media such as symbols, animation, photographs, audio, video. On the other hand, students are able to respond to the text using their own words, pictures, or arts that, of course, it gives a very interactive design by offering opportunities for the students to go public with their own writing in the form of personal webpage, digital storytelling. So in the end, they can make connections with others in worldwide. As we understand the principles of new literacies classroom, practices, studies, and how new literacies teachers should be, and the nature of digital text, now we're wondering, is it what really happened as the fact in the field? A video will try to describe how it really happened in the field. The video has pictured how new literacies and digital literacies have been applied in learning, teaching, educators. Although literacy is clearly changing in the world, schools continue to have their own beliefs and forms of reading, writing, speaking, and listening activities using traditional texts. And furthermore, talking about the prevalence of digital technologies, we can try to discuss further how school make choices about using or not using digital technologies. On the other side, it's not only about the decision of the school or educators, it's also about have or have not. So new digital technologies in the lives of our students, the digital divide still separates the haves from the have-nots, both in home access and in access and appropriate use in school. As we understand that in October 2005, reports from the U.S. Census Bureau indicated that over 85% of households with an annual income of $75,000 or more, of course, had a household computer with internet access, but only 30% of households with an annual income below $25,000 will have internet access, but the rest, of course, will not have internet access. And talking about the access in school, there's the fact that poorest U.S. school districts are the least likely to integrate the internet into the curriculum. And why is that so? Because they are the hardest pressed to raise student scores on tests that do not include measures of new literacies. So that's the fact. Knowing the fact on prevalence of digital technologies, whether it is used by choice of schools, of educators, or whether digital technologies are available at schools or family or districts or not, there should be considerations on the nature of digital literacies. The first consideration, an important consideration, is related to the use of internet. Why internet becomes the nature of digital literacies? It's because internet helps teaching and learning. It helps to identify important questions, navigate to locate information. It also critically evaluates the usefulness of information. Besides, internet helps to synthesize information to solve problems and then communicate solutions to others. So internet becomes the first nature of digital literacy's consideration on its use in the classroom. The next nature of digital literacies is related to International Society of Technology in Education standards, which is called National Educational Technology Standards for Students, that of course affects the way of teaching and learning in classroom, because their standards consisted of creativity and innovation, So students demonstrate creative thinking, construct knowledge, and develop innovative products and processes using technology. Besides, the standards needs the students to also apply digital tools to gather, evaluate, and use information. That's when they research and try to build their information fluency. And the standards also requires the students to use critical thinking skills to plan and conduct research, manage projects, solve problems, and make informed decisions using appropriate digital tools and resources. International Reading Association has also made the nature of digital literacies. International Reading Association made a position statement called New Literacies and 21st Century Technologies, and it is stated that students have the right to teachers who use ICT skillfully for teaching and learning effectively. And they also have the right to a literacy curriculum that offers opportunities to read, share, and create content collaboratively with peers from all over the world. Besides, students have the right to literacy instruction that embeds critical and culturally sensitive thinking into print and digital literacy practices. And of course, the standards including state reading and writing standards with new literacies, and of course equal access to ICTs for all classrooms and all students. Besides International Reading Association, the nature of digital literacies is of course also related to the Common Core State Standards. According to Common Core State Standards, in English language arts and literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects, it should have reference in digital text within reading and writing standards, even start from grade 2, that the students analyze how visual and multimedia elements contribute to the meaning, tone, or beauty of a text. And then students need to also use the technology, including the internet, to produce and publish writing as well as to interact and collaborate with others. And the last one, students include multimedia components and visual displays for presentations, for of course using the graphics and sounds to enhance the development of main ideas or themes. Above all explanation about digital literacies and new literacies, how to do it in the classroom. One thing, remix. Why remix? Because it enables teachers to enhance and transform teaching and learning. So what are the forms of remix? There are several forms of remix based on Dr. Kevy et al. Like photoshopping remixes, and then music and music video remixes. They usually change the elements of song or other rhythm piece or video. And then machinima
remixes or videos. It's machine cinema. That is a form of filmmaking in which the creator often relies on video games to produce animation. And then also original manga and anime fan art, that's from Japanese cartoon or anime. And then moving image remixes such as anime music videos by editing and adding music and sound to an existing moving image. And the other forms is television, movie, and book remixes. And then serviceware mashup. It's the process of merging two or more application programming interfaces with each other and or with available databases. The other form is political remix video and image. This is very special because it usually has a political or social message. And then cosplaying or live action role playing. It's the short for custom play, that the individuals assume the identity of a character from a book, movie, or television show. And the last one is modding video games. So it's actually hacking or modifying video games to operate in ways other than the intended purposes. Dr. Cavi et al. Suggested ideas on how to remix teaching and learning, but also parenting. It is suggested in the parenting remixes that the school should use the technology. It is stated that the school's use of technology empowered us and made us feel valued for being our children's first teachers by making it easier for us to partner with the school in a shared goal. Many times parents feel excluded from their educational process, their children's educational process. That's why there are several things suggested by Shelby Cavi et al. The first, the school district invested in a student information management system, and also upgrades were made to the district website. The next suggestion is for the district to institute automated calls for notification of absences, school events, and emergency situations. And the last suggestion is for the teachers at the middle school regularly updated the school's website with information about the daily homework, and so that parents feel better to be able to assess the school and to cooperate with the schools to manage the students' time and workload, and in the end for them to feel valued for being the children's partner with the school in a shared goal. On teaching and learning remixes, they stated that remixes bridge the gap between teacher and learner and empower them to become lifelong learners. And so there are several suggestions towards remixes in classroom using digital literacies, new literacies. Let's use technology more openly in our school or learning environment. And remember that we still need guidance, because without guidance then they will not understand the use and the purpose of the learning. And then consider the level of collaboration required when remixing instruction. In addition, Compton Lilly suggests new literacies to teach struggling readers. There are 3 steps suggested by Compton Lilly to deal with a boy illustrated in the article who has struggled in his reading skills. The first one is by doing new literacy studies. It is the studies how literacy practices are linked to the students' lives, identities, and social evaluation. That's when it helps the educators to move beyond skills-based approaches to literacy learning that will enable them to recognize that a vast range of experiences can contribute to learning of literacy. And then the second step is the involvement of media practices. And why we need to involve media practices? It's because by involving media practices, it helps us to understand how the children drew upon media resources, including television shows, music, sports, and video games, to stimulate the discussion on the classroom teaching and learning activities. And the last one is by having a critical race theory involved into the teaching and learning. Understanding the race theory will help the teacher to understand more about the students, and it allows the children to build upon their strengths and be themselves. It's because we're willing to change our ways of teaching by understanding and respecting their differences. Understanding the individual of the children helps the teachers to monitor their interaction and crafting the interaction in ways that allow children to build up again their strengths and be themselves. As Compton Lily gave us the example on the practice of new literacies to teach struggling readers, there's also example within the setting of fourth grade classroom by Lab Moss and Roswell on practicing new literacies by remixing instruction with a gradual release of responsibility model. Using gradual release of responsibility model will of course include four main things and four main activities within the classroom. The first one is focus lesson. In focus lesson, teachers establish purposes for learning and model strategies and cognitive processes. And the second one will be guided instruction. That's when teacher prompt, question, facilitate or lead learners through tasks that increase understanding of task or text. And the next will be collaborative learning. That's when learners consolidate understanding of content and explore opportunities to problem solve, discuss, and think with their peers. And the last step of gradual release is independent learning. That's when the learners practice applying skills and information in new ways by synthesizing information, transforming ideas, and solidifying their understanding. And so through these four key elements of gradual release, the activities in new literacies classroom of fourth grade given by Lab Moss and Roswell's example will be the first one, as what we've discussed before about the roles of new literacies teacher. The teacher also does the same way here. So the first activity is when teacher's role is as text interrogator. Here, as text interrogator, Miss Cervantes, that's the teacher in this fourth grade, enable the students to get inside the mind of an expert reader and thinker who skillfully assume the role of the interrogator of a text, rather than just passively accepting its contents. And the second one is when the teacher gives supporting personal remarkings. This is very important because during the next part of the lesson, the teacher moves from whole class instruction to guided instruction. Of course, within this guided instruction, teacher will work in a small group, and this will allow her, the teacher, to support and extend students' personal remarkings or interpretations. The next step, when the teacher becomes the resource manager, design consultant, and knowledge co-constructor. As the result of modeled and guided instruction, students had expanded their topical language and content knowledge, as well as the social practices of literacy investigation, analysis, and reflection. And here is when the students are invited to be engaged with collaborative tasks that require their using, applying, blending, and then transferring their knowledge as they try to interrogate text content and design embedded messages and ideas in images, and then also use inquiry and discussion to foster the awareness of hidden message in design and content. And the last activity of the gradual release classroom using news literacies is, of course, gaining independence through the creation of multimodal text. This is when we look at detail and clearly how the students use the multimedia. So the students try to gain their independence after these small group presentations. They use comic strip or comic book format to independently create additional dialogue among people during the gold rush, because at that time they discuss a book about gold rush entitled Gold Fever Tales from the California Gold Rush. So those are the actions of new literacies classroom towards remixing instruction using gradual release of responsibility model. There are also examples of practices using digital literacies by Taylor and Duke. There are several focuses of examples, like focus on word recognition and vocabulary by using digital language experience approach and vocabulary images, and examples on focus on comprehension by using comprehension of print-based linear text by using digital concept maps, and also fostering comprehension of digital text. Digital literacy classrooms can also be done by focusing on written expression. How? By fostering digital communication, like responding to reading. And the last one of the examples is the focus on the disciplines with using virtual field trips. So there are several resources that we can use during our focus on the disciplines, like museum websites and interactive museum exhibits. You can have lots of different resources here, different websites that you can access. Those are wonderful websites from lots of museums from all over the world. You can see NASA Museum of Modern Art, and even Smithsonian National Museum of National History, American History, African Art, Space Museum, So those are wonderful resources you can access. After the discussion that we have, we should reflect on several things. The first thing that we need to reflect, digital literacies provide unlimited access of information for students. Do teachers need to set up any limits? What are the limits? What are the considerations in setting up the limits? The second reflection will be what obstacles might occur in developing new literacies classroom, how to deal with colleagues or parents who might resist to the development. And the last one, how will you maintain your willingness in following the development of technologies to create new literacies classroom? Please respond to these reflection questions in the thread of this webinar. Your ideas and thoughts will deepen our understanding on new literacies, and these are resources that we use throughout the discussion. You might access some of the sources, and if we are wondering, new literacies classroom will be like what? This video might help us to picture new literacies classroom.
Get out those cell phones and tell me, what does ambiance mean?
Un avion, un bloc.
hatte du ein Passwort?
Thank you very much for joining webinar on new literacies. I'm looking forward to have your thoughts and ideas throughout the thread of this webinar. Thank you.